Okay, this video is going to cover task number 3. A lot of what I'm going to focus on is what it means to write a synthesis paper and what it is I'm expecting from a synthesis. Okay, so task number 3 is Rhetoric and Ideologies in Historical Perspective, a synthesis essay. Your goal for task 3 is to show your readers that you can synthesize ideas and concepts explored by various authors we have read in modules 1 through 3. So you're going to use modular readings and you're going to talk about what are the common threads or what is a common idea. What is a commonality that you're noticing amongst some of these sources that you can synthesize so that they're all talking together? To synthesize in its basic form means to combine viewpoints to form a complex, new perspective on what you have read. Therefore, a synthesis essay draws on multiple sources and combines their ideas into a coherent whole that provides a new perspective on the readings. So if you start to synthesize, let's say that we're tracing Aristotelian influences through the first 3 modules, the new whole that we're coming to is how different time periods, especially the cultural events of those time periods, shaped how those rhetoricians, how those theories read Aristotle and then what they did with Aristotelian theory. So Aristotle originally started his theory as an empiricism, so how do we make knowledge? And as we're starting to get into the later Burke era, especially in Module 3, we're getting to criticism. How can we take these early ideas, and we can see traces of ethos, pathos, and logos in identification and alienation, as well as obviously Freudian influences. How do we turn these into a criticism? So we're making knowledge in specific ways to get groups of people to identify with us, and we're alienating other groups for those same reasons. And then specific rhetoric, specific discursive practices are used to maintain that particular idea. So with the synthesis essay, what you'll do to get to how all of those ideas come together is you need to read your essays, or you need to read the articles, or you need to read the Smith textbook in a very specific way. What you are not looking for a synthesis essay are direct quotes. Direct quotes are long, they're lengthy, they're cumbersome, and what direct quotes don't do well is tell the reader how you, as the author of your text, are interpreting that quote to come to your overall point. So as you read or reread or re-glance over all of the materials from chapters 1 through 3, as you put together your synthesis, what you're looking for are ways to summarize theories from those different readings and then explain how that summary of that theory converses with another summary of another theory, and then how those two support the point you're making, or how they juxtapose the point that you're making, or how we in our current modern times can reinterpret those summaries in very specific ways to do something new with that particular theory. Okay, so with the synthesis essay, you're going to approach the readings in a very specific way. So there's some guidelines here in the assignment sheet, and then I'll actually provide an example. So to write a successful synthesis essay, you will need to read accurately and objectively to look for similar issues and topics in each reading and to infer relationships among texts. Notice nothing here says you're looking for direct quotes. You're looking for overall relationships, theories, and ideas, and you're summarizing those and then putting them in conversation with each other. Ultimately, you're going to define a thesis that addresses a common theme that unites the readings. Your thesis will address the question, what information must we know in order to understand the topic I am addressing? And why do we need to know this information? You need to fill in the blanks. I know the common assumption for tasks is that I'm your author, or I'm your reader. And yes, of course, I've read these texts multiple times, but you want to, instead of assuming that I know everything, fill in the blanks, because what you cannot assume is that I read the piece the same way that you did, nor that I am summarizing to the exact same theory and then considering application in the same way that you are. That's what you need to fill in. None of that can be accomplished through a quote. You really do need to fill in the blanks with summaries and then guided summaries. Here's the direction of understanding that this paper is going to head in. Your thesis and your ideas will drive the paper, and the sources will support your ideas. This means that your papers will have new ideas and that your readers wouldn't get from the reading through the text. You're combining sources to create something new. Okay, so example. Yes, this is an article that I wrote. I know that's obnoxious. Just go with it and don't judge. What I've done in this particular background paragraph that you can see is I've included 4, 5 different articles in one paragraph to get the reader to the point that I want them to, so I can then make my particular argument. So as instructors and faculty discuss and implement video games in their classroom and curriculum, there's continued need for both pedagogical discussions. In this case, I'm indicating Sheldon had this pedagogical discussion and assignment-specific discussions. Previous scholars have debated the use of games and game-like principles. I'm telling you who did that. Many focusing on theoretical advantages to games, collaborative use of games. Again, I'm telling you who did all of this, and gamification. And so now here's where I'm saying, here's what all of that was lacking. Here's what this paper is going to do, with too little focus on video games in the actual classroom. So I've synthesized very, very, very quickly 3 different foundational pieces in the field of game studies and then said, here's what they're all lacking. This is a synthesis. This is using existing research, and it's saying, here's what these are discussing. Now, here's where this particular conversation, my conversation, is going to head for these reasons. In 2 different studies, they introduced 1 or 2 commercial games, giving a little bit of background information to say, okay, yes, this is what's going on. While a useful study, the strict guidelines required to work with children in games leaves the study difficult to transfer to higher educational settings. Again, this is what's been done. Here's the direction that this argument's heading. And then I'm contextualizing it further by saying Rice determined that teachers interested in using video games, especially popular games, had very few resources available to them. Here's the why. Here's why this summary matters, and this is why I, as the author, want you, as the reader, to read it. So I've gotten 5 different sources into 1 paragraph. I've synthesized 4 of them. I've laid out my argument, and I've told you why you need to read this paper. This is an example of a synthesis, how you put these different authors, these different theories, these different ideas in conversation with each other in a way that drives the point towards why your reader should read it and what it is they should get from it. What is your thesis? What argument are you going to make? This is what you want to do with the synthesis, and this is essentially, although you'll lay out a lot more background research than I've done, you will lay out the background research to say how you came to those conclusions and how you contextualize each of these different ideas. Okay, so returning to the assignment sheet, considerations. Choose your thesis for your synthesis essay based on the themes that you intend to address in your essay. And we have a few different examples. So religion and the influence of religion, literacy, especially when we get to Martin Luther and beyond, teaching writing and how it's influencing our understanding of literacy, women's writing, the way that metaphor is used, adjusting writing to specific discourse communities. These are just ideas. These are just guidelines. As usual, send me a tweet or direct message me or email me if you have questions, if you want to run your topic ideas by me. These are just things to consider to help you get thinking about some of the common themes that we've seen so far in modules 1 through 3. You need to choose texts for modules 1 through 3, and you need to use at least 10 texts for your synthesis essay. When I say 10 texts in here, that again does not mean that you're writing an annotated bibliography. You need to put these texts in conversation with each other. As you start to contextualize and provide more information on individual texts, provide a summary, and then summarize the summary as it relates to your point and how it relates to another reading, or summarize a couple and then do that exact same thing. You need to show the connections between articles. The job here is not for you to show me that you've read all of these sources and to write an annotation on the source to prove that you've read them. Instead, it's to say, now that you've read them, how are you seeing connections? What connections do you think are really important? And what do you think somebody else should get? What kinds of connections do you think other people would find really, really important? Tell me. That's the point of task number 3. This also relates directly to your proposal for the final paper, so make sure to take the same mindset, the same approach to the reading of the text, the summarizing of the text, and using the summary to support your main point as the goal of a synthesis. How do I put these people in conversation with each other, and then how do I put that to, here's what I want to tell you, here's what you're going to get from this paper, and here's why you should read it. Those are your goals. Your synthesis essay should include the following parts: introduction, body, conclusion. You guys can read through this. The introduction will be fairly short. The body will provide more information about some of the individual sources, and it will summarize them to the point where you tell me, here's how they talk to each other. I know I've said this multiple times, but for the most part, you are not going to use very many direct quotes. If you come from a strong literature background, this is going to be a new approach to writing for you, and that's fine. If you come from a more rhetoric approach, this should be something that's a little bit more familiar and slightly more comfortable for you because we like our summaries and we like our paraphrases and rhetoric. So you really don't want to find a direct quote that's going to support everything, because I can promise you there's not one line in any article that completely summarizes everything that person has to say. You need to summarize it, and then you need to give credit to that summary by putting the author's name, the year, as you saw in my examples, because I was using Harvard citation method in that one. APA obviously uses year as well. So use the appropriate citation method so we know who to accredit it to. They'll obviously go into your works cited at the end, but make sure what your goal is to put these theories in conversation with each other. How do they all get along? Show me. You'll then have a conclusion. Here's what I told you and here's why it's important. This should be 3 to 5 typed double-spaced pages. On this one, I'm going to be firm. You have 3 to 5 typed double-spaced pages, period. End of story. You need to learn to synthesize these materials. You guys have done amazing on Twitter in condensing all that you want to say into 140 characters. Now do it in paper form. Look at all of the ways that I've prepared you for this. Also include a cover letter. Here's all of the information. You guys can read through this. It's pretty straightforward. And then you'll submit this to the task number 3 Dropbox. If you have any questions, as always, email me, direct message me, or include my Twitter handle onto a public tweet, and I will address those questions. If you have ideas for topics, do the exact same thing. If you have ideas for topics for task number 3 and the proposal, make sure to differentiate in your tweet so I know which one you are trying to deal with that particular question. I'll see you guys online.